Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Regular Show, and Avatar have all had solid finales, encapsulating strong build-up to their final season. A solid story and a solid character progression will do you wonders. I always note that your first season and your final season are the most important seasons in a show. The first season should always be a solid hook to your audience into feeling any worth in a show, especially if the show isn't from an already established franchise like Marvel or Star Wars. I recently saw Castlevania and it immediately hit me with the first couple episodes with the death of Lisa and raised Dracula into declaring war against the humans after many years of living like a man. Each episode felt like a progression to its story and not a filler every one solid episode. It certainly helps that the writers give actual distinctive personalities to its characters and morals which determine outcomes and scenes.
Let me kiss you.
Avatar, although not having an intense start to its season 1 its first 2 episodes in terms of story, as an introduction it focused more on for audiences to learn each character's personalities. For example, Sokka having the comedic yet warrior-like personality, and Zuko having that drive in him but a much more douchery approach to his drive, which is often criticized by his uncle.
Power in firebending comes from the breath, not the muscles.
But then the show progresses the story and world around these characters, giving more layers to their backstory and the world around them, like learning why Aang left the Air Nation and fear of the pressure and being forced to leave Mount Gyatso and having the guilt of being responsible for the genocide on them committed by Sozin. Or learning of Zuko's drive was the result of him caring for his men and being banished by his cruel father and scared. The first season ended off with the good guys winning an epic final battle against the Fire Nation fleet where the Water Tribe was victorious against Admiral Zhao. But the ending also left for what happens next. Ozai, who we have no idea how he looks like, sending Zuko's sister to hunt down Zuko for his defiance against Zhao, and Iroh for being a traitor. The season certainly left you with wanting more. Although season 1 may be considered to be the weakest of the show, it was still solid enough to do its job of introduction and gaining new audiences. Each season certainly improved after the last, till season 3 wrapped all the narratives of constructing for a satisfying ending to an overarching story. I consider season 3 to be the best final season to a show, yes, even over Breaking Bad, and that's a huge height to reach. But given the title of this video, have a seat and I'll tell you why. In order to break down what made season 3 work, we have to look back on what happened prior to season 3. After beating the Fire Nation at the Water Tribe, the gang began to look for an earthbending teacher for Aang, whilst trying to find different strategies to take down the Fire Lord before the comet arrives. The day of the Black Sun, where every firebender is vulnerable as they are powerless. Meanwhile, Zuko and Iroh have been deceived by their own people, as Azula is on the hunt for her brother and capturing him to be punished by his father Ozai. Meanwhile, the gang ran into their own set of problems, losing Appa, having Azula on their tail, and the big climactic finale. Oh, the big climactic finale. Season 2, the show teased many instances where Zuko was leaning towards joining the Avatar team, but when the moment was upon him to say "F you" to his honor, well, he chose to go apeshit. The result of Zuko joining Azula, Aang suffered a bolt while in Avatar's state, closing his ability to ever perform that big, huge, humongous power. Despite being healed, this was a perfect ending, not a happy ending, but a more of a sad, less hopeful end to a season, leaving to feel eager on what happens next and needing more. How do our heroes overcome these adversities? Many opportunities for twists and turns. Season 2 is similar to The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire, as in the Fire Nation, have taken full control of this conflict, defeating the rebels and deep freezing a vital character. Luke, unable to overcome Darth Vader, has put the rebels' push on a standstill and imposing the Empire as a real threat until they lose to teddy bears. Oh, George. Having the Fire Nation win gave them a huge advantage, putting the Avatar gang on the bad end of a pushback. Crazy that the fate of the Avatar was relying on Zuko's decision at that very moment to do the right thing, but it immediately backfired. Destroyed Aang's chances ever harnessing the power that is possibly the greatest to ever defeat Ozai. It doesn't help that Aang doesn't have firebending teacher and wants to avoid firebending since the last time he used it, he burned Katara. The only good note from the ending of season 2 was Katara using her healing power to save Aang from that strike. Zuko joining his home was a power shift. They regained a vital yet a powerful firebender and helping Azula take over Ba Sing Se, a fortress unable to be taken down for so many years. The season just gave us questions like what happens next for the Avatar gang? Or what happens to Iroh for defying the Fire Nation? What is Ozai's next plan given that he finally achieved the greatest victory? What a great way to end your season, to push for a season 3 to help further these stories and narratives, allowing for progression and setting up for excellent payoffs. Speaking of payoffs, the show did a brilliant job at closing out character arcs. Neither a character was assassinated for no possible reason. Characters who were highlights, like Zuko, the most unique aspect of his arc this season was his own internal conflict. Now there are some people who criticize season 2 for completely shifting Zuko after a very big build up to this turn to joining the right side of the war, and a personality shift from a brash, terrible, egotistical individual to a very nice, helpful, kind firebender who saw the many aspects of life outside his privileged home. The suffering, the dread, a life of a refugee. Not a citizen, but a refugee who's been affected by the war that his own family started. But Zuko never lived the life of acceptance from his father, regaining his honor, hence why he was after the Avatar for so long. But that was before learning the cruelty his nation disposed on the world. The irony of it all that he's never lived a life of a masked victim of war. His perspective would probably been much different, that he would have never stopped Ozai's plan of ridding the world under Ash.
During the meeting, I was the perfect prince, the son my father wanted. But I wasn't me.
That meeting changed how he viewed of the Fire Nation and took a stand with Iroh's knowledge to join the Avatar. Speaking of the Avatar, Aang, who went through numerous character arcs given how many layers of his characters delved on him living as a monk. Immense pressure when he left the big ice ball. He needed to learn to let go of his feelings, let go of his guilt and past, and needed to learn all 4 elements as a 12-year-old to save the world from a warmonger. He faced hurdles along the way like burning Katara and refusing to firebend because of it, the ability to control his avatar state by unlocking all chakras, but yet again failing to let go of his feelings towards Katara and the new rules such as the no-kill rule. And yes, I know he used airbending in much more aggressive situations, but I'm letting it slide as animation usually overdo their action where a simple punch can feel like someone getting hit by a cinder block. After getting pushed against the pointy rock which opens his chakras, he went Super Saiyan on Ozai until he controls his emotions and holds back. Luckily, the Lion Turtle gave him much more reasonable ability that possibly is worse for Ozai than killing him, which is getting rid of his power. Another great payoff, one of them starting in the middle of the season but executed perfectly in a short amount of time. A rare sight to see actually.
I know, I'm even a vegetarian.
Hell, we all wish we were able to wield all elements of the world. We're all like Sokka. He's definitely the comedic type with jokes which land most of the time, but he doesn't have special abilities, but that never stopped him from being an excellent strategist. And a notable episode called Sokka's Master, he works hard and wants to be more than just a comedic guy. He builds his own sword with his own sweat and creativity. His teachings definitely came useful as when buying time for his and Toph's safety on the airship. Another great payoff. Even Katara, carrying the hatred for whoever the man was for taking her mother, the revenge instincts her to kill the man. And Zuko was willing to help her since he had close relationships to the Fire Nation. But when the moment hit, she let go of her hate. But when the moment kicked in, she let go of her revenge instincts, knowing it would be too easy to punish someone for the horrible war crimes and acts he did, and letting him suffer is a much more reasonable justice. Her mother's loss certainly helped her to become more motherly towards the group, and the necklace given her by her mother is definitely really symbolic. This video would be 2 hours long if I went over each character like Iroh, Toph, hell even Azula, more on that later, but it just proves how well the writers have written arcs for all of them, and just wanted to touch upon some of the more notable ones, Zuko being the heavy of season 3. Great villains, having the biggest obstacle should feel like an endgame. No, not that endgame, the one which our heroes have to build themselves to save the world, or whatever the item of the story writes that holds significance. The Fire Lord is a title that has a negative vibe due to the friendship turned sour, one lusting for power, the other disagreeing with such ideologies over the years. The Fire Lord name has caused deathly destruction and only harm to innocents for their own hunger. With the Avatar asleep in the ice for so many years, no one powerful enough was able to stop these tyrants. Ozai, being the last Fire Lord who carried with such a cruel nature, was hidden image throughout season 1 and 2. His name though, was held to in such high negative regard. You saw how powerful and ruthless he was through the likes of Zuko, Azula, and tarnished villages and brief visions. The writers knew for a fact the motives such as world conquering immediately can dry out if they continuously showed Ozai in his life. Let's face it, he doesn't possess three-dimensional qualities nor motives with complex planning and layers to such a motive. Roku and many past lives warned Aang, if this comet comes, which is the biggest disadvantage for this team, as the sun becomes so red to the point that it generates maximum power for the firebenders. They use a ticking clock concept where Team Avatar had to reach a certain amount of time to learn something and fight the Fire Nation in their own uncomfortable zone. The Black Sun, but Hurdle's trickery put them at a standstill, like leading to an event in which Ozai is at his full power. Even Azula, who's in the overscale of things, was sort of the sub-villain, but played a huge role in season 2 and caused many troubles for Aang. She's smart, strategic, manipulative, and sensitive. She's all bask in glory and wants to prove herself by competing with herself to be better and gain appreciation from her father to fuel her own ego. I mean, Admiral Zhao was certainly the weakest villain as no plan worked out for him, and in the end he suffered being trapped in the spirit world forever. As for Zula, she was an immediate upgrade. Right off the gate, her power is on par with Aang without the Avatar stay, and it took Iroh, Zuko, plus the Avatar team to take her down, but she immediately got out of the situation by using Iroh as leverage. She even made a plan once they infiltrated the Kyoshi warriors to disguise themselves and take Ba Sing Se from within, and she learned of the attack during the Black Sun, protecting Ozai, which would have been game over for him. She actually made it difficult for the team in every aspect to succeed on their plans, such as manipulating Zuko to join her side. Season 3, she pinpoints her victory on Zuko for striking the Avatar, let's face it, by saving her own skin. If Ozai ever found out that the Avatar was alive, Zuko would be berated by his father and receive a big punishment. She really put the Fire Nation at the top, but their main weakness was her own manipulation going against her. When all her friends and family left her all alone, she goes crazy, creating the final battle between her and Zuko all more heartbreaking. She was a compelling villain that had many layers to her story, and her story just ended up to being something tragic as we got more and more into Ozai's story and how manipulative and egotistical he was towards his kids. Great villainy allows for a better holy grail. It gives our protagonists something to actually build themselves, having to get smarter and stronger. That's what season 3 did with these characters. It created a much more compelling and interesting villains. One in a very unique way to help push guys like Aang to face new challenges and overcome their adversities. The action, so much build up, so much character development, you gotta go off with the bang, and it sure it did. Aang versus Ozai was a climactic battle of the most powerful Fire Lord on his turf versus the Avatar, who was at a very extreme disadvantage. The visuals, the sound effects, having Ozai being that fire chasing Avatar like it was some Tom and Jerry shit. It even had moments where Aang could have easily defeated Ozai, but given the fact that we learned of his rule, he avoided to go into that path of wrong. Azula versus Zuko was also brilliantly done, as the entire bout was more visual and sound than words. A quite opposite feeling considering Azula was the one who was always confident. The blazing heat and the sound of fire with the music was crafted masterfully. The show of blue versus orange was a nice callback to Zuko's metamorphosis where he dreamt of the two dragons. The color of fire indicating the path he took was Iroh's wisdom. And the ending of their fight wasn't meant to be happy, as even in Zuko's eyes, it was hard to watch. Having season 3 filled with moments of growth is a key to a successful finale. Even in film, many finales on the grand of schemes feel epic but don't land because the film or show is moving the plot along without building anything around it. Whether it's friendships, morals, villains, motives, character traits, themes, play a huge part into a finale feeling worth it. Season 3 for Avatar succeeded at this. It's why it's my favorite final season to any show. Show simply started off solid and each season just improved right after, which is natural and should happen in shows. Unlike other shows that start off with a bang but forget the story they're trying to tell and focusing on too many things without building anything from it. Anyways, that's it from me. So yeah, see ya.